Welcome to Capitol View on WSIU. I'm Jeff Williams sitting in this week as we take a look at what's making news around the state in Illinois politics. At the top of the newsfeed this week, Governor Pritzker signed legislation adding new protections against civil immigration arrests, and the Trump administration is again threatening to withhold federal funding over disagreements with two of the state's Democrat leaders. We'll take a closer look at those stories and probably more this week on Capitol View. To help lead the discussion this week are Brenden Moore, State House reporter for Capitol News Illinois, and Kent Redfield, a political science professor emeritus at the University of Illinois Springfield. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here.
Great to be with you, Jeff.
Well, the governor on Tuesday signed a bill that bans civil immigration arrests in and around courthouses, as well as provides some additional protections, I believe, to daycare facilities, college campuses, and hospitals. Brenden, you've been following the story. What will this new law do?
Yeah, Jeff. So this is the response to the immigration campaign known as Operation Midway Blitz that the Trump administration has been undergoing in the Chicago region for the past several months. It's kind of wound down now, but the government claims that it is still ongoing. So it does a few things. As you mentioned, it basically provides a maybe not quite a ban, but it places restrictions on civil immigration arrests inside state courthouses. So basically, you would have to it would create this 1,000-foot buffer zone around these buildings. There kind of been a de facto understanding in the past that these were safe zones. People are going to court, they're doing the right thing, but they have been the site of some of these immigration arrests in recent months, including a case in Staunton where somebody who was undocumented, but he was going to show up for a DUI case, and ICE agents came and got him. So it wouldn't necessarily be able to, people wouldn't necessarily be able to stop federal agents from going in, but it would allow for people to sue these agents, and they would be civilly liable or damages up to $10,000. It would also allow for residents to sue immigration agents if they believe that their constitutional rights are being violated. That's kind of a controversial provision in this legislation. It's kind of been acknowledged even by the bill sponsors that this is probably going to be challenged in court. The supremacy clause of the Constitution gives the federal government a lot of leeway to operate in states, and doesn't really allow the states to place a lot of restrictions on that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the response is in court from the federal government here. But as you mentioned, there are a couple other provisions just kind of dealing with some common spaces in the public, such as colleges and universities, hospitals, childcare facilities, basically making sure that they have policies in place for dealing with immigration enforcement. It also kind of prohibits them from disclosing immigration status of students, patients, parents, children. And again, just make sure that they have like policies in place. It's not the most, it's very limited in what it does. I mean, I think the sponsors acknowledge that, there's only so much you can do as a state to stand up to the federal government. But, they wanted to do something because this literally has been on the front door of legislators, especially in the Chicago area. These are their constituents. These are, they say their communities have been traumatized and terrorized by federal agents. So they view this as, at least we're doing something to respond, even if maybe it's not everything that they want.
Yeah. As a backdrop, or maybe going on in the background of this, several media outlets have reported the past few days that the Trump administration is again threatening to withhold at least some federal funds for the state of Illinois over dust-ups or maybe differences of opinion with the governor and also Attorney General Kwame Raoul. Both are Democrats, over some of the state's, I guess you would call them sanctuary laws, and the Trump administration's referral to the state's lack of cooperation in areas of immigration. That also includes a recent request, I think, from the U.S. Department of Agriculture for, I think, what the governor calls sensitive data related to the state's SNAP recipients. Can kind of help put this latest tug of war into context for us.
Yeah, these are, it's definitely there's a public relations battle going on in terms of framing exactly, what the contention is between the state of Illinois and also the city of Chicago and the federal government's attempts to uh, wrap to increase their focus on identifying and deporting people who are in the country who, illegally. And so it this is both this public relations battle, but when we're talking about the federal government, then we're getting to specific uh, grants, specific programs where, uh, you know, while there may not be the ability to completely deny Illinois funds that have been appropriated for specific purposes, you can certainly slow things down. You can, and so you're trying to exert leverage. So we had a uh, a memo come out from Homeland Security and specifically focusing on the Attorney General, talking about how all of these people who were finishing criminal sentences for a whole variety of things. They had been incarcerated. That ICE puts out detainers. It's a civil kind of document that we want to get these people into custody and look at their immigration status. And now, clearly, the law is that these civil detainers that don't involve any kind of court actions are, as the case cited by the Attorney General in his response, these are requests, not recommendations. And so the state is not happy with the way that the Trump administration and ICE are prosecuting their, increased immigration in enforcement. And so, there is this back and forth about, there's the ICE is saying this is reasonable. These are the worst of the worst. The state pushes back and says, first of all, it's a request, not something we have to honor. Secondly, the big beautiful bill has billions, literally billions of dollars increased funding, and so the state is saying, this takes away our efforts to do criminal to provide public safety. They're asking us to do their job when and that takes away from our ability to do the law enforcement. There's not, again, they're vague, they're threats about how we're going to do things in terms of money that's appropriated for public safety kinds of things, federal money. When you get to something like transit, then you got the president essentially, as far as anyone can tell, kind of creating a new kind of request that somehow the state needed to provide in a week some kind of emergency plan for fixing reducing the amount of violence on the Chicago Transit Authority, Metra, all of the focus is mainly northeastern Illinois, the transit. And that comes with real teeth because you have money that is appropriated for those specific systems. And if you can, again, we're trying to bail them out, balance them. There's been a big push. The governor's response is, it's a 300-page bill and we've got, 60, 90 pages worth of things we're going to do in terms of public safety. So, we've already done it. So this is back and forth again. But it can have real impact when you get to SNAP. Again, this is food stamps, is the way we used to refer to it. Then this is about, you know, the federal government wants as much information as possible about who's getting this these grants from, that are passed through the state, and they want that data. They're looking for um, illegal immigrants, people that are undocumented, but they're also trying to highlight fraud in terms of if they can find people that are on the rolls, then that strengthens their case that they're really not that in the long run, all of the restrictions they're putting on SNAP are going to have a positive public policy impact. So this is one more chapter of the back and forth. Sometimes it has teeth, sometimes it doesn't, and it's one more thing that makes the state's efforts to make these programs work. It's one more, in some cases, distraction. Other cases, it's a serious threat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The governor on Tuesday, I believe it was, said that the General Assembly is standing by to redraw Illinois' congressional district map if a Republican-led redistricting effort in Indiana succeeds. We may know what happens with that effort by the end of the week. There's been some legislative opposition by some Indiana lawmakers, including some Republicans, to that plan, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. But Brenden, here in Illinois, at least during the session, legislative leaders seemed, hesitant, maybe reserved about the need to redraw the state's congressional maps. Is there any more definitive support from House and Senate leaders now for redrawing what is, I think, admittedly already a pretty gerrymandered congressional map in Illinois?
The short answer is no. But nobody really wants to blow up the map in Illinois. As you said, I mean, it's already one of the most gerrymandered maps in the country. It's a 14-3 map in favor of Democrats over Republicans. Yes, they can squeeze out a 15th seat if they get creative with their cartography, but the districts would look quite ugly, and there were a lot of concerns, particularly among Black legislators, about the dilution of minority majority districts, particularly Black districts. There are currently three Black majority or districts drawn to elect African Americans in Illinois, and basically those would have to get maybe watered down a little bit to get a 15 seat. So there were some concerns there. In October, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries came to Chicago, and then he came to Springfield, and he talked to Illinois legislators trying to get him on board. The Illinois Democratic congressional delegation says, they're for it too, but they're not the ones that are going to be voting on it. It would be the state legislators. Governor Pritzker would have to sign it. And I think some of his rhetoric on this is kind of keeping up with the Joneses a little bit, because California had the referendum. Gavin Newsom was really out front on that. They're going to redraw their districts to create 5 more Democratic districts to counter Texas. We see in Virginia and perhaps in Maryland, they may redraw to counter Republican gerrymandering in other states. And then the governor kind of tied down, well, we're a Midwestern state. Perhaps we can pair with Indiana if they do it. And this was when nobody really thought Indiana was going to do it. They kind of shut it down. But President Trump has really turned up the pressure on these lawmakers. So we will see if there is enough support in the Indiana Senate. But if it does happen and it gets signed into law, that would perhaps put the governor and state Democrats into a tough spot, because logistically, at this point, it would be very hard to do a remap, because the ballot has basically been set for the March primary. So you would probably have to move back the March primary, at least for federal races for the congressional races, or you would have to change, signature requirements, because you have to get a certain amount of signatures to get on the ballot in your district. So logistically, there are so many hurdles that it is so hard to see it happening. But you can't rule it out, especially with what's happening in other states.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
What? Yeah,
quickly,
go ahead.
the only, to do this, you would have to flip a Republican district. The only one that it would be possible, vaguely, would be LaHood's district. Boss and Miller's districts are so intertwined with protecting Sorensen, the Democrat, Baginski, the Democrat, and you would have to somehow get more Democrats into LaHood's district by giving Republicans to suburban congressional districts that are, not nearly as strong as the Chicago districts in terms of Democratic majority. This is a non-starter from a whole bunch of different directions.
Hmm. That kind of dovetails into kind of the next area I wanted to talk on. Illinois historically has been a strong union state. The AFL-CIO has released its endorsements for the upcoming March primary. A majority of the state House and state Senate endorsements are for Democrats, along with a few Republicans. In the statewide races, though, noticeably absent were endorsements for state controller and perhaps the biggest race in the state, and that is for Dick Durbin's open U.S. Senate seat. Kent, what does this say about the race when the AFL-CIO is unable to, amongst themselves, come up with a majority of support in a couple of key statewide races?
Well, they are not worried about whoever gets elected not being a friend of labor, and so that's where they start. These candidates, by and large, the major candidates in the districts we're talking about are have strong labor records. Some of them have been aggressively getting endorsements from specific unions, and that makes it much more difficult to get a consensus vote within the AFL-CIO's, the way they go about this, because you've already got people that are committed to, a particular candidate, and so it's a testament to really how strong labor is, that they're really not worried, and they don't, if they've got three people that are perfectly acceptable, then why make an enemy of someone? Now an exception would be in the ninth, where Biss, the former mayor, the mayor, former legislator, is they've endorsed him, and there's some thought there that they're worried about. There's an influencer who's, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce her last name, but they're worried about that there's an uncertainty in that district, because you really don't know how that phenomena translates into a very big field. And so they are, I think, saying, this is the strongest candidate to make sure that we're 100% comfortable with whoever, the person that comes out of the primary.
Chicago media and Capitol Facts are both reporting that the governor is expected to sign the Medical Aid in Dying Act on Friday. This is a bill that's not been without a little bit of controversy. Brenden, what will this bill allow when it becomes law?
Yeah, Jeff, this narrowly passed back in the veto session in October. It kind of came up unexpected. It passed narrowly in the House in May, and then it got up in the Senate and passed with no votes to spare. Basically, it would allow Illinois residents that are terminally ill the option to take basically life-ending medication that's prescribed by a physician. They would have to be diagnosed by, I believe it's two physicians, that their illness is terminal, that they are within 6 months of death naturally. So it is viewed as a perhaps a way to provide people a dignified death. And laws like this have popped up in a handful of other states. But obviously there are concerns from a lot of corners, and it's not just the typical corners, the right to life folks, but there are folks that are concerned about, are there enough safeguards in here where it truly is going to the folks that's intended to serve, that not just anybody who is depressed and wants to end their life can get a hold of this medication. So Governor Pritzker has taken his time on this. He's acknowledged that it's a tough issue. It came up very briefly in his audience with Pope Leo the 14th earlier or last month, and but he's expected to sign it. And I guess we'll see if he does that by the time this airs. Uh, but he's definitely being very, very cautious and very deliberative in reviewing it. I'm sure his legal team is taking a look at it. But no matter what he decides to do, it's going to there's going to be strong opinions on both sides of this.
Sure. Sure, gentlemen, we've got about 4 minutes or so left. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. The spring legislative session is going to get underway in about a month in January. Either one of you, any predictions about what we may be seeing, what may be priorities in this upcoming spring session?
Well, we have a primary coming, and that's always an issue when you're trying to do a spring session in an election year. It is they will not pass a budget before the primary, and I mean, no one expects them to, but this is going to be a brutal year in terms of getting a state budget, and so a lot of people would like to not do as little as possible to get focus on them before we get past the budget, and then there's really not any other issue other than how are we going to put way too much spending and match that up with way too little money. And so it will not be fun to be a member of the General Assembly. If you're leaving, I guess, then you don't, that's not as, it's not as dramatic as if, you're either going to, you're going to have to, make some really tough choices.
Brenden?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Kent, I think the budget is going to be a really dominant part of the discussion. I mean, it always is every year,
Yeah.
and there's always other issues that come up as well. But they did get some big ones off their plate this year with the transit bill and with energy reform. So I think this next year is going to be what we call, I guess, a budget year, because it is an election year. They're not going to want to do a whole lot. They're going to want to get out on the campaign trail. But they have to pass a budget, and the governor's budget office is projecting a $2.2 billion deficit in the next fiscal year. Now, of course, some of these reports that come out don't end up being as bad once the governor gives his budget address in February. So we'll have to see how some of the numbers, I guess, what the results are in the next few months, what the revenue shows, but it's not going to be great, especially with some of the cutbacks coming from the federal government that didn't really affect the state as much this year, but in the coming years are really going to start to have an impact on the budget, especially when it comes to social services like Medicaid spending, SNAP perhaps, and a lot of other programs that the state gets money from the federal government. So yeah, it's not going to be fun, but it'll be. I mean, they always figure it out every year, so we'll see. But yeah, I would say a lot of focus on the budget this coming session.
Yeah. About a minute or so left, gentlemen. What's on your radar for the coming week for each of you?
Well, I guess I would say, we've had a kind of a pretty sleepy Senate race so far, surprisingly so for Senator Dick Durbin's seat, but we're starting to see it heat up a little bit. There's some reporting in the Sun-Times about $90,000 worth of contributions that Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy received from an ICE contractor, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Obviously, not a great headline to have as a Democrat running in a primary, but he's the front runner. He's on TV. Other candidates have struggled to get traction. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, Congresswoman Kelly. So it'll be interesting to see if they are able to, I guess, kind of get more of a foothold in this race.
All right, Kent, anything?
I'm watching what's happening with the Republican primary and the governor's race. Not that either one of them, and it's Bailey last year, from 4 years ago, and then Ted Dorowski, who is more of a policy wonk, wants to kind of sound like Bruce Rauner, and this is going to tell you a lot about how the Republican Party is or isn't going to start to rebuild. What are they going to, is this going to look like 4 years ago? Or are they going to try to frame it in a way that at least gets them, stops the bleeding in terms of the Republican Party? So that one's going to be fascinating.
All right, Kent, I'll let you have the last word. Kent Redfield, Brenden Moore, thank you both for joining us this week on Capitol View, and thank you at home for tuning in. I'm Jeff Williams. Have a good week.